Elaine, thank you so much for the great introduction. Just wanted to say thank you everybody for joining. I'm such honor. It's such an honor to be here with you guys, sharing my knowledge in Flutter. And I see a lot of people already joining. So again, you guys are in for a treat. We're going to be learning a lot of great things in this session. So I definitely want to extend the thanks again one more time for inviting me in to this GDSC and to support your efforts as well. So thank you so much. Should I start sharing my screen real quick?
Yep.
Awesome, perfect. So let me do that. Okay. Just only a few slides so that we can start, and then we're gonna get right on with the show. So let's start right away. Let me know if you can see my screen. Just with a quick thumbs up. Awesome, great, thank you again. So, like I said, this is gonna be a very interactive, hands-on workshop. I've done this a couple of times, but this specifically, I've created it for your community, for these type of communities, so that we can come together around learning Flutter and learning technologies like Firebase to build like really cool stuff, great modern web applications. So again, like I said, my name is Roman Jaquez. I am a Flutter GDE. I am also a lead organizer at GDG Lawrence, and also I am a mentor for the Northeast. And I just wanted to again thank you again one more time for the invitation. Here in this slide, you guys can see a couple of the links, how you can find me, how you can reach out to me. You can follow me on Twitter at Dear Coders by scanning the QR code there in the screen. You can also check out my YouTube channel where I have a couple of videos around Flutter and other technologies, but mostly around Flutter, where you can see how I build an application from scratch. So great videos, great content in there. I've also been doing live streaming every Wednesday, where I've also started developing a game like using casual games and Flutter. Flutter is such an amazing framework for all types of applications, mobile, web, desktop, embedded, all types of application. And I've been doing that in my live streaming via Twitch and YouTube. So make sure to tune in. And last but not least, you can check out my portfolio, a site where I've developed a bunch of mobile applications, web applications. I even dabble into AR. I do like a lot of things. And Elaine knows me. I even do also like cloud, because I'm also a cloud architect certified from Google. So just wanted to say thank you again. Please reach out to me by following me on social media. So thank you, everybody. Yeah, just as a reminder again, let's try to be open. These are the common community guidelines that we want to follow. Let's all be open because we want to all learn together. Be modest. Let's be modest with one another. Help each other out and be respectful, because here we're here to learn from one another. We're here to learn from each other, and we want to be respectful as well. So let's just follow those community guidelines and continue. So also, yes, as a token of my appreciation for you guys joining this session and being so awesome as you guys are and being part of this GDSC Michigan University, and again for your invitation. Also, I want to do a raffle at the end of the session. If you participate in this workshop and you fill out the form, I believe that the team is going to be dropping that the link in the chat so that you guys can fill out a form where we're gonna ask you your name and your email in an email, so we can send you an Amazon $25 gift card at the end of this session. So right after the session, you can immediately start spending some of that. So yeah, so at the end of the session, as a token of my appreciation, I'm going to be raffling one $25 Amazon gift card. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining, and I hope you enjoyed this session. So let's proceed. If you're here, of course, is because you want to learn about Flutter. Flutter is this amazing open source UI toolkit created by Google. It's open source, and you can build beautiful, amazingly natively compiled applications. You can deploy for 6 distinct platforms. You can do mobile, web, desktop, or the way that I call it, the WinWell, which is Windows, Android. You could do like Windows, iOS, Mac OS. You could do web, you could do Android, you can do Linux, and you can do embedded. So you can do all of those type of all those platforms with one single code base, just using the programming language of Dart, which is also open source. and it's also was also created by Google. So it's just an amazing platform for you to tackle a lot of projects. And now when we pair it up with something like Firebase, which we will explain in a minute, you can do a lot of amazing things. So I just wanted to start out the discussion in the workshop with just one quick audience prompt, something like an icebreaker. So after work or your studies, like what do you do? I just wanted to you just drop in the chat a number. Like if you're on more a number one where you work on a side project, or you are more of a number two, you relax, you forget about coding after studying or work, or you do a little bit of both, or you do other things. It's all good. Me, to be honest, I am more of a number three. I see. Yeah, there you go. See a lot. Yes, yeah, a lot. I'm more of a number three. Like I do a little bit of both. For example, like I've been, I binge watched Stranger Things last night, but then I was also building an application, and I also created some content. But also I went with my son. Outside, and we were just playing it with stuff. So you see, you do other things, you mix it up. That's great to do. It's great to have a good balance in your life. But of course, never leave that passion, the hunger to build really cool, amazing things with the community, with your friends, with your colleagues, because that's what's gonna make you grow as an individual and as a professional. So amazing. Thank you, guys. Yeah, I see a lot of people already. Yeah, fans of Stranger Things. So thank you so much, guys, for participating in this audience prompt. So thank you so much. So we're going to be discussing about Firebase and Flutter. So at the end of the session, I promise you, if you follow the workshop, the team is going to be dropping the link of the workshop right now. You're going to end up with a published Flutter web application in a publicly available on the Google Cloud using Firebase hosting. So we're going to be using Firebase. Firebase is also a product from Google. It's this suite of services that you can use to build very robust mobile web and server applications. And we're going to be using one of the main features of Firebase, which is called hosting. Firebase hosting allows you to host your web apps, your static web apps. You can use Flutter Web Apps as well, and you can host them on the Google Cloud for free. Of course, when you're in the Spark tier, which is a free tier, and you can host it. It's publicly available. You're gonna have a custom domain, like the name of your project .web.app, for example. You're gonna have HTTPS by default. So imagine all these things just at the end of this session. So we're gonna start right away, but we're gonna hit the ground running, and you're gonna be able to create a simple portfolio Flutter web application. If you see the code lab, you're gonna see it right there. You can follow along. So at the end of this session, you're gonna have a public, simple portfolio app that you can show, like your name, your profile, a couple of links and whatnot, and you're gonna have it publicly available. I'm gonna promise you, just follow along. Just sit back, relax, and enjoy if you just want to watch as well. But let's get on with with this workshop so that we all can learn more about Firebase and Flutter. That's it. No more talking. Let's code. So let's get ready for this. I'm just going to move this over to the side. And as a prerequisite of this workshop, let me see. I think I already have the code in here. But if you see in the application, for example, if you see the workshop, I say that as a prerequisite, you need to have installed Flutter. Flutter again is an open source UI toolkit, and it's the framework. So if you go to if we go right now to the link that was provided, which contains the workshop, right? So let's all go there. I'm going to show you. I'm going to show it to you right now. So see, I'm starting exactly with everybody, like at the beginning. So let's all do that one as well. Let me just show my screen, which contains that. Here we go. So this is the workshop that we're going to be doing today. So at the end of this session, you're going to have a very simple animated little like profile card, but it's going to be available publicly. So you can make sure to put like your picture in there, your name, all your information, and then you can build it out. And then at the end, you're going to have it publicly available that you can share it with your friends, with your families, colleagues, and whatnot. And then at least it will give you a very hands-on experience of Flutter and how you can do deployments with one single click to Firebase hosting, which is actually being hosted on the cloud. for free. No cost. I promise you that. You will see that at the end of the session. So let's start. So if you see, we're going to be building a very simple Flutter web application. We're going to be learning about Flutter, how to create Flutter interfaces with ease. You're also going to learn about how to build these things without no additional library other than the material library and the core widgets in Flutter. You're going to learn about explicit animations. You're going to learn about material icon fonts. And of course, you're going to learn about Firebase. At the end of the session, you will also end up with a Firebase account, a Firebase project that you can use for other things as well. And I'm going to show that in just a minute. So let's proceed with, see, we're already done with step number one. We're going to go with step number two right away. So three other prerequisites was having the Flutter framework. And just to be honest with you, the Flutter framework, when you're dealing with web applications, Flutter for web is very easy to install. The hardest part of the one that is a little bit more challenging, of course, is the iOS and Android, but we're not going to be doing that today. Although the same project that we'll be doing right now, you can deploy it on an iOS and Android, but then you're going to need either Xcode or Android Studio underneath it so that you can build it for those platforms. Today, we're only going to be dealing with Flutter Web, which is much quicker. So I'm just going to go quickly overview on how to download the Flutter framework if you guys don't have it yet. But you can just click on step number two and you click on the download and installing the Flutter framework link. If you click on that link, you pick the platform that you're tackling this with. Let's say you're going to be doing Windows, Mac OS, Linux, or Chrome OS. In my case, I have a Mac, and you can click right here where it says Mac OS. And then here it tells you like which is the specific SDK that you need to download. So it downloads as a zip. It's very simple. It just downloads as a zip. All you have to do is just grab that zip, put it in a place where after you unzip it, you put it where you want the Flutter framework to reside. And then after that, you just point your path to that folder, so that then when you start building in the command line, then you have it available. So for example, in my case, I have an Apple Silicon. You would download a zip file, so it would just download. It may take a little while, but for example, in my case, I've already downloaded it. After he downloads it, then he just you have to unzip it and whatnot. So for example, you see in my particular case, I'll try to download it, but I hope you guys have already done it. In the case that you did it already, for example, I can show you what it looks like. But other than that, it should be very straightforward installation. Um, Great. So I just wanted to just give me a thumbs up. Has anybody not installed it? Otherwise, then I can spend just a little bit longer on this. But other than that, then we can just proceed with the workshop. But the prerequisite was to have the Flutter framework installed in here. Okay. So for example, see, it's almost done. So I'm just gonna show you real quick. Awesome. Yes. Flutter uses. Yes. You can. Again, Flutter is pretty good because it definitely leverages the underlying infrastructure, and it builds natively. So the great thing about Flutter is that it builds natively for all of these platforms. So it's not like a wrapper, like a web wrapper or anything like that. It definitely compiles natively. In the download, so I should be able to see now my zip file. So let me show you right here. So in the downloads, I should be able to have that file all the way up here. So if I like unzip it, I try to unzip it, and then if you see, it will just give me my zip folder. Let me show you like my unzipped package, where you will see now when I have it. So there it is. So I have the Flutter folder. Now this folder, you can just drop it anywhere. In my case, I love dropping it inside of the applications folder. And then when you go to the applications folder, in the case of, let's say, if you're doing Windows, you would be pretty much the same thing. After you do that and you have the Flutter framework, which is just one single folder, it contains all the dependencies in there. Then the next thing that you need to do is just export the path. The path is nothing more than you letting your system know where to find the command lines that you're going to be executing for your Flutter project, right? So after you move let's say the location, you point it to the location to where it is. Let me zoom in a little more. So in this particular case, you have to export path, and then you provide the path to where the Flutter/bin folder is. In my case, it should be in applications slash flutter slash bin. And this is the files that you need to target in the path, pretty much. So that is the installation of the Flutter framework. After that, you can test, for example, like how the Flutter framework, you can open up a terminal. Let's say in my case, I'm going to open up a terminal. Again, I'm only going over doing a quick overview on installing the framework. But if you have done so, you can even start with the workshop. But I'm just at least going over a few things. After you install the framework, you can just, for example, if you see here in applications, for example, you will see, for example, you can see the applications in there. But if you can just, once you set up the path right up there, like you do export path, and then you provide the path to where Flutter is, you can just say Flutter doctor. This is the first command that you can execute to check whether your installation was correct. And if you see, for example, that everything has like a bunch of X's, that, no worries. We're only going to be targeting Flutter Web in this particular case. So the web, at least you should be able to have the Chrome as a developer tool. So Chrome, we're going to be using Chrome in order to deploy our Flutter web application locally. So it doesn't matter, for example, like if your Xcode is not installed or Android is not installed, because we're not going to be targeting those frameworks. We're only going to be targeting the web. So make sure that at least when you do Flutter Doctor, after installing the Flutter framework, you have at least the Chrome, which is for developing for the web. So make sure that you have that at a minimum. And now we will continue. So at least make sure that you have Flutter, you run Flutter Doctor, that you have the Chrome developed for the web, and then now you can proceed. Perfect. Okay, now after you do that, the next requirement that we mentioned was like either having npm package manager. The npm package manager, as you know, is Node package manager, is part of the whole ecosystem of Node.js that allows you to install packages like public packages. And one of the packages that we're going to be downloading and we're going to be using is the Firebase tools. I can show you that later, but at least make sure that if you, for example, if you don't have it installed yet, make sure that you can go to Node.js. You can even start like from Node.js and download it from there. So when you download Node.js, it also brings the npm package manager along with it. These are for to installing like tools, like for example, like the Firebase tools, not specifically for Flutter. For Flutter, we are all set. But now, because we're going to be doing Firebase, we're going to be using the CLI, you're going to need some of these tools. So you can use the Windows installer, or you can use the Mac OS installer. So you see here, I'm providing you with the npm package manager. You can go immediately and download it. You can just click there. And then you see how you can download it. After you install it, it installs very quick. Then you should have the npm package manager available in your terminal after you install it. So let me show you, for example, what it looks like once you have it available. If you install the Node.js, if you just do, for example, like npm, you have the npm command. We're going to be using it later for installing the Firebase CLI. Perfect. Now, let's proceed now with the workshop itself. With the last requirement being Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code is one very friendly editor that allows you to develop. It has a great IntelliSense. It has great community extensions, and is of course is built is open source as well. So it's an amazing editor that I love using for Flutter and other people. A lot of people use it, use Visual Studio Code. I recommend it to you as well. But if you, let's say, if you like Sublime or Brackets or any other type of editor, Vim or via anything like one of those, you can still use it. But this one will give you the intelligence that you need. It's going to give you tools, snippets, and all of that that you can definitely use to be more productive. So that is my recommendation as a code editor for building applications, not only in Flutter, but other applications as well. Awesome. So we've covered the three prerequisites that you needed for this workshop. Awesome. So let's proceed. Now I'm just going to close over on these things. So now that we've spent a little bit talking about the prerequisites, now let's proceed in creating a Flutter project. So if you've done so, if you have Flutter installed, now let's proceed with step number 3. Step number 3 allows you to create a brand new project with your Flutter framework already installed. Now we're gonna be running some command lines so that we can build that. Great, and thank you thank you to the team for dropping the code lab one more time. Now that we have the project, the framework set up, now let's create the first project. So I'm gonna move this over to the side a little bit so that we all can see it. I'm just gonna move this over here to the side, and you can take a look at it. I'm going to do exactly the same thing as you see in there. I'm going to open, I am here in my folder called GDSC, and I'm going to open a command line right inside of my folder or wherever you have your Flutter projects. Then you execute the command Flutter create, and then you put the name. Let me zoom in a little so you guys can see it. Flutter create, and then you put the name of your project. Your number, yeah, the name should have, for example, in this particular case, I suggest you putting your name underscore portfolio, but you could name it anything you want. But because we're building like a portfolio, simple Flutter web application, let's call it that. So I'm going to call it from Roman underscore portfolio. It doesn't, you can only have like underscore. You can have spaces. You can only have underscores. You can have dashes. Otherwise, it fails. But make sure that you do Flutter create in the name of your project. You hit enter. And then you see how now the project gets created. Simple as that. The project was created. Very simple. If I just clear and then I do an ls here or dir, and if for those of you using Windows, you will see the project. So now let's use Visual Studio Code, but let's change to this project to be the root of our project as opposed to being here. So that you can see it, let me just open up to that folder. So I'm going to click open folder. I'm going to go to my Roman portfolio folder, and this is going to be my root. That way I can explain a little bit about Flutter and you see how the structure works. So this is the structure of a regular Flutter project. You have like your Android folder, iOS, web, Mac OS, Linux, because you could do it for all of those platforms. Great. So now you could do, for example, you can here look at the lib folder. The lib folder is the one that contains the code that your application is going to be based on. So if I would love for you guys to go to this lib folder and click on the main.dart file. The main.dart file is the main file in Flutter that bootstraps the application. So now that your project is created, now you can start building your application. Now we're going to be testing it to see what it looks like. Let's say just like whatever Flutter gives you as the initial project, you're going to get like a sample project. This is a sample project already. So if you want to test it and you see what it looks like, okay, let me see that at least everything is set up correctly. Make sure that you can here, for example, if you're using Visual Studio Code, you can see here that is pointing to my Mac OS, or you can use Chrome, like you can pick Chrome, like the browser, as a device, like because you're targeting a platform, you're targeting the web. The Chrome web is kind of like a device. Another way that you can test this application and run it on the web, like launching a new browser window, is by typing the command flutter run -d Chrome. I'm going to copy this command and I'm just going to drop it in the chat just so that you can see it. So Flutter run -d Chrome, this is saying run the Flutter project, -d is the device, and then you specify what type of device it is. You can say Chrome, you can say iOS, you can say Android, you can say like that. But in this case, we can say Chrome so that then we can target that type of device, in this particular case, the browser. So I'm going to hit enter. And now you will see that it's going to start building the project. The project gets built. It's going to get compiled. It's going to get. It's going to be generating, because that's what the Dart and the Flutter framework do. They grab all this Dart code and they're going to build it as a JavaScript file. And then they give you even like an HTML page. I'll show you what it generates. And you see, this is just what we get. This is the sample project that you get, which is what they call it like the counter project. And then if you click, you can see that we're already seeing the benefits of Flutter, how it rebuilds, how it shows like something at least simple and interactive. So if you see this page, you're good. That means you set it up correctly. You can move it to the side if you want to, and then we can keep it like that as if it was a device, and we're going to keep it on the side. Everything that we do here, then we can like immediately preview it on the web right here. And a couple of the things that I just wanted to show you how you build in Flutter is like you change the code in here, and then it has one of the great features which is called hot reload. Hot reload, if you see it here, it allows you to reload your code as you make changes. You can see the changes in real time as you build your application, as opposed to having to shut down the application, rebuild it every time, and then it takes time. In this case, you make one simple change. For example, let's change the string here. Like you have pushed the button. For example, you can say you have, very good. I'm going to change this to say, for example, welcome to GDSC Western Michigan University. And then let's say if I want to see the changes right away as opposed to rebuilding, I save on my file. I just hit the R in the command line. I just hit R, and then all it does is just rebuilds, and then you see the new change appeared in here. So that is called the hot reload. There's another approach. You can do Shift R, which is called a full reload. Like it just gives you the full reload. If you hit Shift R, it gives you that the full reload. In the web is the same as a hot restart. It just builds the whole page, but at least it shows you the changes right away. So you have hot reload, full reload, or full restart, which is just gives you the whole thing. Great. So let's proceed now with the workshop. So now that we have everything set up and our file is set up, now we can start with the project. Now we created the project. We were able to create it. We loaded it. We saw how it looks. Now let's proceed to step number 4. So in step number 4, we're going to start now building this main application widget. So let's start. And one of the great things about Flutter is how quickly it makes you very productive. This is just a bunch of like boilerplate code that I don't need. So actually, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to delete everything. There it is. No code. I'm going to start from scratch so that you see how from nothing I can get something real quick going. So let's start. The first thing that you need in Flutter is importing the library. So let's all be on step number 4. And in step number 4, I'm going to copy this line, which is going to give me the importing of the material library. The material library is the library that gives you the whole material design, so that you can leverage those guidelines, the design guidelines from Google, so that you can make your applications very, very slick, very modern, and using a very already robust design language like the material design, and then you can build very cool applications. It has a lot of great customizations. So if let's say if you're doing Android, you would go for material. If you're doing iOS, you could do the Cupertino. But if you're doing web or you want to make your application look the same across all platforms, use material. Perfect. Let's proceed. So now I'll continue, and then I'm going to go for the next part. The next part is having the main method. So you're going to add the main method to the Flutter application. The main method is the most important method in a Flutter application because it bootstraps the application, right? So you need the main method. The main method launches the application. Then the next method that you need is the run app method. The run app method is the first method in the framework that you're tapping into that actually puts the first widget in the widget tree. Flutter relies on a tree of widgets. You build a widget, and then a widget can have another widget underneath it. That widget can have another widget. That widget can have children, more widgets, and so on and so forth, building a tree. So by doing run app, you're actually installing the root widget, like the widget that stands at the root, like at the top, and then you can start building the hierarchy like that. Awesome. So now we're going to add the first widget, and we're going to be creating one widget. We're going to be creating it. We're going to make it as a constant. You see, at the same time that you're learning the Flutter framework, you are learning Dart. So I'm showing you a little bit of the syntax of Dart and whatnot. So some people ask me, do I need to learn Dart before Flutter? No, you can learn it simultaneously, because Dart is a very straightforward, very object oriented, and very easy to read language. So it's very friendly. So again, let's continue now with building our first widget. Everything in Flutter is a widget. So the way that you create widgets, you create classes that either extend one of the common classes like stateful widget or stateless widget. Let's continue. So I'm going to call my first widget just like that. I'm going to call it personal portfolio app, for example, just like this. You're going to get a red squiggly because it doesn't exist yet. Now we're going to create it. So the way that you create your widgets is by creating a class, and then that class can extend one of the base classes for you to create widgets. So after we install that, let's go to step number 5. So in step number 5, I provide you with this class. So I'm going to paste it right underneath the main method. You can just copy that class and paste it there. So if you can see here, the way that you create a widget is by creating your name, the name of the class, and you extend either stateful widget or stateless widget. Stateful widgets are widgets that maintain state. And then stateless widgets just paint themselves once on the screen and don't change. So think about that. Stateless widgets, widgets that don't change. Stateful widgets, widgets that change throughout the life cycle of the application and just provide more interactivity and persist some state. Because the way that Flutter works is that Flutter rebuilds at every frame, like at 60 frames per second. You want to build your application very robust and very animated, very interactive. So if you want to do something more interactive, you have to build it as a stateful widget. In this case, we just want to build it very simple. It's just going to paint once on the screen. So we're going to make it extend stateless widget. Perfect. Every custom widget needs to have a build method. The build method is the most important method in a widget. While the main method is the most important method in a Flutter application, the build method is the most important of the widget class. Why? Because the framework calls your build method and then builds the hierarchy of your widget. Then if you create a child widget, that widget needs to have a build method. The framework also calls it, and that's how you build your hierarchy and you build your structure. You build it inside of the build method because the Flutter framework calls it for you and then puts it on the widget and then puts it on the screen, paints it on the screen, and mounts it on the whole widget hierarchy. So let's proceed. How do you build then your custom widget? What do you do inside of it? Well, one of the first things that we're going to do is inside of this build method of this custom widget, we're going to add other widgets. So I provided also one more widget that I like to use, which is the one that provides the material styles for the whole hierarchy. So inside of the build method, you paste the piece of code that I showed you right there. And then now let me explain it a little bit. So the material app is another widget. Everything in Flutter is a widget. The root widget that we created, the application itself is a widget. So you start by creating a material app widget. The material app widget sits right there at the root, providing the material styling to your whole application. Then you provide this method. You see this little sash that you see here that says debug right here in the corner. This is this flag right here. So you turn it off because you don't want to see it. That's only for debugging purposes. So you just turn it off and say false. And then the material app has a property called home. Home then is kind of like the first widget that gets shown to the user. Like, what's the home widget? What is the first widget that I'm going to show to the user? That is where you install it. Scaffold. Scaffold is another widget. It's another widget that gives you like the scaffolding that you need to build like pages in Flutter. And then scaffold, again, just like everything in Flutter, is another widget. And then scaffold gives you something called body. Body is just something that is going to be displayed at the body of the page. Center. Center is another widget, just centers things in the middle of the screen. And then inside of the, and there are widgets. I think I explained that earlier, that there are widgets in Flutter that take one child, or widgets that take more than one child. They take an array, or like a list of children. Center is a widget that just centers a widget, and it takes only one single child. You can give it one single child, and then that child can have more inside, more other children inside. But this is all the center widget does. Very simple. Yes, Elaine was very clear right there. Word of the day: widgets. In your mantra, everything in Flutter is a widget. Think about that, and you're gonna go really far. So you see now you also get another squiggly here because we haven't created this widget. So it's asking for a widget called personal portfolio, but we haven't created it yet. Does anybody remember how to create a custom widget in Flutter? Just like the way we did this one. You create another class, you're going to call it personal portfolio, and you're just going to mount it on the widget tree. Let me show you how to do that. So you see, now we're going to be creating the personal portfolio widget. This is the one that's going to contain now our portfolio. So the same way that we did before, we're going to create another class. That's how you build widgets. Get into the habit of creating widgets. You create it as a separate class. You call it whatever you want. It either extends stateless or stateful. Very simple. Stateful or stateless. Stateful are widgets that maintain state, and the state lives in the memory as the widget rebuilds. So the widgets can rebuild many times, but the state, you want it to persist. That way it doesn't get destroyed, and you want to show the changes to the state every time your widget rebuilds. So let me show you that example. So we're already in step number 6, and we're going to be building the personal portfolio widget. First thing, of course, you create the personal portfolio. You create a class that says stateful widget, and then you add another piece of the class, that because when you create stateful widgets, it's like a two-step process. You create the widget itself that rebuilds many times, and then you create the state, which maintains the state as the widget rebuilds. The widget can rebuild, but it doesn't destroy the state. The state changes, the widget rebuilds. The state changes again, the widget rebuilds again. That is the way that Flutter works. Anybody remembers the most important method in a Flutter widget? Yes, is the build method. So in the build method is how you build your structure. So now, for example, in my build method, I can just do anything. I can start creating my structure. I can, for example, I can come over here and say return, and then I say a text, and I say hello world, for example. You see? So this is where you build your structure inside of the build method. If I reload my code and see it, we should be able to see the word hello world just showing in the center of the screen. Very simple. That's all you need. You see, you build structures. After inside of here, I can create another widget. Remember, we have to create another class, create the build method, build a structure, and keep on going. And that's how the hierarchies get built in Flutter. So if you see there, it's very simple. For example, if I want to now, for example, see, this is a stateful widget. You can see it right here. It's a stateful widget. The state is then what maintains the state. If I create, for example, like a variable called like a, for example, like value equals 100, and then I display it here, I can say value, for example, like this. Let me just show you. If I rebuild it, if I reload it, should be able to see a value of 100. I need to change the, let me increase the font size. I can do text style, font size on 100, for example. Let's make it a little bigger. For example, if you reload it, you will see 100 in there. But you see, this is the value. Now, if you want, for example, that value to change, you for example, when you change it by, let's say, a clicking of a button or something like that, you do it and then your widget rebuilds. That is what we're going to be doing here in a minute. But I just wanted to explain at least how it works whenever you want to create like a stateful widget or a stateless widget. In this case, the widget is going to maintain this value in memory while the widget rebuilds. For example, one quick example is if I do, for example, like a column. A column is again another widget, and then a column takes more than one child. Let's say I I just want to display a column with the text, with a text value, right? It's just displayed like that, displays like that. If I want to add, for example, like a button, let me add a text button, and then it has like an event called like on press. Again, this is not part of the workshop. This is just me explaining a little bit on how it works. We're gonna proceed again with the workshop, but I'm just gonna show here, for example, like click me. I'm gonna create like a button that when I click, I want to change, let's say, the value of the state. If you see here now, I'm gonna build this. I'm gonna reload this, and you see there is a the number 100 and a button that says click me, right? The way that a stateful widget works is you change the state and you tell Flutter to rebuild so that it reflects the new value that it changed. The way that you do it is, let's say in this particular case, in this button, in the on the unpressed event, you do this. You say set state. Inside of the set state is something given to you by a stateful widget that what this does is you're telling Flutter, go rebuild me this widget because the state changed. So then what you do then inside of this method, inside of this callback, is you change the value, let's say, of the state. In this case, value is 100. That is what I want to continue. And let's say every time I press my button, I'm going to increment it by 1. And then every time I click it, Flutter will rebuild and read the new value. Let me show you. So if I do this now, if I reload it, and if I click me, you see how the widget changes is because I am telling Flutter, the value changed, meaning the state of this widget changed. You need to rebuild to show the new, reflect the changes that are. We're at 120 right now, so you need to show me that value as I click. So the key here is calling this method called set state. And inside of the set state, you change the state, and then you set state is all the set state does is calls Flutter or notifies Flutter so that Flutter calls your build method one more time. If I click it again, it calls build again. When I click it again, it calls build again, and so on and so forth. Does anybody understand that? I hope you do. Now let's proceed with the workshop, because at least I wanted to get that the concept between stateless widget and stateful widget. This was a stateful widget that we did. You see, maintains the state. The other one, the stateless widget, doesn't maintain state. It just paints itself on the screen and doesn't do anything. Let's continue now on for the next step. The next step, now we're getting more into the meat of this thing. So now we're going to show you, I'm going to delete all of this. I'm going to delete this because this was just an example. But now I'm showing you how we're going to be building the structure of our Flutter widget. So it's going to look like that. It's going to look like a column. It's centered. It's going to have a column. You see, it's going to have like all of these are core widgets. So for example, you see the word container. That is another widget. Text, I already showed you the text widget. Text button, I showed you the text button. All of those are core widgets that we're going to be using, and we're going to be creating now this structure. This is how you build structures in Flutter, by building little widgets, using other widgets, and composing them, by creating the hierarchy like that. So let's continue. One of the first things that we're going to need is we're just going to add this constant final color that we're going to be adding, because we're going to be providing this color, let's say, throughout the application. This is going to be like the theme color for my application. So you can copy this color, and you can even put it like right up here. You can put it like right on top of you can put it here, for example, let's say, if you want it. And then we're going to be using this color throughout our application, or throughout this widget, right? So just paste it anywhere at the top of the class here inside of the state class. This is where we're going to be working. So you can call it, you can change your color. If you don't like blue, just come over here and change the color. You can say, red. Let's say, I would love to see you guys changing these colors. You can just come over here. You can say, you can pick a color. You can say color. And then, for example, the one that I had was like red or blue, but you can even come over here and change the color, because if you see, Visual Studio Code gives me like a color palette that I can pick any color. So I'm gonna pick a different one. I'm gonna pick something like a purplish type of color. But you can even come over here and say colors dot purple. Also, you can change it. So pick your color and then you assign it there. Perfect. Now that we know what your color is, what your favorite color is, we're going to be using that throughout the application. So let's start building our structure. The first thing that we're going to be returning out of our build method, remember the build method gets called by Flutter when it mounts it on the widget tree and it paints it on the screen. So it's going to build your structure. The first thing that I'm going to do is say add a center widget. So let's all copy this and let's just paste it right here and then I'm going to explain it. So a center widget, like as you know, centers the widget in the center of the screen. A column, like I showed you earlier, a column is another widget that just lays out the widgets in a vertical fashion. Here, this is just saying, just give me the minimum amount of size in my column. Don't make it the size of the whole screen. Center them vertically. You know, the main axis in the column is vertical. So center them vertically and center them across the column, meaning horizontally. So it's going to center it exactly on the screen, vertically and horizontally. And last but not least, children allows you to add children to the column. The column takes more than one child, so you have to add them as children of your column. But at least now we know that the column will be centered vertically and horizontally, and it's going to occupy the minimum amount of space provided by its children. So as many children as you have, that's how high is going to be. So let's keep adding other widgets. The next widget that we're going to add is we're going to add an image widget. You're going to see how cool we're going to do it. So pick your image. You can even pick an image from like let's say I pick my image from GitHub or from Gmail. So, but make sure that the image is publicly available and then it has like an HTTPS a protocol to it, right? So it's publicly available. You can pick it from, for example, I go to my Gmail, for example, like this image right here. I can pick this one from my account. Look, check this out. I'm gonna grab this one. And the way that I do it is I say copy image address, and then I have my picture right there. So I'm going to be using that picture. If you have a picture available, let's say from LinkedIn or from your Instagram or wherever you have it, from Twitter, grab that image. I'll wait here while I explain this. I'm gonna let you go grab it. So you can use mine if you want to. Use the one in the collab. In my case, I'm using this image. I'm gonna grab that image from the collab, and then I'm going to create a property right up here also on top of my of here, like on top of the widget, and I'm going to provide the avatar image path. So the image path is the same one that is in the collab. If I show it here, you will see it. There it is. So you can pick like any image. In this case, I'm going to be using my own image because we're building like a personal portfolio or something. So let me just paste it right here, and there is my path. So let me just say view word wrap so that you guys can see the whole thing. Perfect. So far so good. We're building our structure. So it's a center, it's a column. Now we're gonna add as a children, the first child in this column. We're gonna add the image. Let's scroll down so I can show you what we're doing. So we're using a container. A container is another type of widget that just gives you like for those of you who know like web, it's kind of like a div pretty much. And then you can use it because it's very versatile. You can create it to create like boxes, to create background images. So that is exactly what we're doing here. I'm going to copy this container and I'm going to add it as the first child of my column widget. I'm gonna format it, and then if you can see it, let me just bring this lower a little bit, and then I'll explain it. So it's a container widget. Everything in Flutter is a widget, even containers. I'm gonna provide a width and a height of 100 pixels. I'm gonna add some margin at the bottom so it has like some breathing room. And I'm gonna add decoration. The decoration allows you to make it round, add corners, like round corners to your containers, add a background color, add a background image, add a local image, add a network image, add a lot of things. In this case, I'm adding a border radius of a circular border radius, which makes my container look like a circle. Then inside of that circle or inside of that container, I'm adding a decorator image as a background image. So if you see here, I'm using the property called image, and then you use a decoration image. Decoration image is nothing more like a background image. Like if you're using like a div, like in HTML, you can add a background image to a container, to like a div. In this case, we're adding an image. Our avatar is a network image because it's coming from the network. If you're using, for example, something coming from your local file system, you will have to say asset image, like this, asset image. And then this is something coming from, let's say, your local project. But because this is from the network, we call it network image. We want it to cover the whole container, and we want to add a border around that container of the color of our application. So after I do that, let's just save this and reload one more time. And let's see what it looks like, what it's starting to look like. So if I come over here, the image doesn't show yet because it hasn't been deployed. We are running this project in localhost. Once we deploy it, then we will see the image it will display for us. But don't fret, the image should display if you have it correctly. If it showed correctly for you, for example, like this one in here, and it's like publicly available, you should be able to see it. Another way you could try is actually it's actually building the whole project, and then you can see the image coming out. But it will come out if you build it as the final product or when you deploy it. Perfect. So far, make believe the image is there. That's okay. You can use my image, like I said, if you want to do that. But now let's proceed with the rest of the structure. So now that we have, let's say, our image in there, now we want to start adding like some of the information underneath it. So how do we do that? Same thing. After I add my container, this is my container up there. Now what we want to do is another type of structure. So we're going to be creating like a couple other widgets under my container because this is a column. I'm going to be adding those widgets underneath it. So let me just copy this. You can just copy all of that and replace it by your own information. So every widget inside of the column, you separate it by commas. So make sure that you add a comma at the end of the container, and then you paste all those other widgets like that. See? So now that we have that, you see it looks pretty good. Now you can just change it by your information. For example, this is just a text widget which has our application color as a style. This is kind of like adding CSS pretty much. So you do text style, you add an app color, you change the font size of the text, and you make it bold. And then in my case, I'm just calling it Roman Jaquez. Perfect. Then I'm adding other things, for example, like another text widget, but just with plain text. And I'm adding Flutter GDE, Cloud Architect, and you add another widget called Sizebox. Sizebox is a widget. It's like everything in Flutter is a widget. It just gives you like an empty space. It's like an empty box. People use Sizebox instead of using like a padding or whatever. You can use that like as a hack for adding some spacing in between, and just add it as with a height of 20 pixels, and it's just gonna give you like an empty space of 20 pixels. That's all it's gonna do. So let me save this. I'm going to save it all, and I'll reload it just hitting R or Shift R like I showed you earlier. And now you see the application taking a little bit of shape. Perfect. Uh, we have a couple more minutes to the hour. We have then the next hour to continue. I just wanted to open it up for anybody who has any questions around what we've touched so far. Again, around Flutter, the structures, how to create widgets and whatnot. Does anybody have any questions that you might want to drop it in the chat? Or if the team would love to flag those questions to me, that also works out. But I just wanted to take one quick, not only a time check, but a little bit of a breather to pace the workshop. So to see if anybody has any questions up to right now. Just wanted to make sure. Otherwise, again, we can continue cruising, but just give me a thumbs up. Or if you have any questions, please feel free to say it. Perfect. Thank you. The team says, what's the difference between the regular variable and a final keyword variable? Correct. So that's a very good question. The final variable, what it does, final is a keyword that allows you to assign a property, and then that property doesn't change after that. So this is more for creating values that are available throughout your application that do not change. This is similar to like creating a constant, but the difference between final and a constant gets assigned immediately and doesn't change. Final, you can define it initially, but you have to set it afterwards, maybe via the constructor. For example, like in this case, then you would have to create like a constructor. For example, I would have to say personal portfolio state, and then you would have to set the property via the constructor and say, like, you can say something like this, that app color, and then you set the property through there, for example, like as a required property or something like that. You see, so you can create it, but it has to be assigned through the constructor, but then after that it doesn't change anymore. Or you can just assign it right away like a constant property. So by just doing that, that means this is something that is not going to change. Later on, I cannot do like, I cannot come over here and say, or anywhere else, I can come and say app color, like app color, and then I change it. Sorry. Uh, I cannot say app color and say, colors that red. No, you cannot do that. You sign it once, it gets assigned, and it doesn't change. So that is the difference between a regular variable that, for example, if I just do it like this, yes, I can change at any time. And for example, it's kind of like the way that I did the stateful value above. Remember, I didn't make it final because I wanted to change as the widget rebuilds. For example, this one, you see, this one is not final. That one is okay to keep it as a regular variable. So thank you for your question. Great question. I'm going to bring it again to final because again, I don't want it to change and I want it to be the same throughout the application. So let's continue that. So now we're gonna, for example, now we're gonna proceed and add a button. So we're gonna be adding a button to allow people, let's say, to like send us an email. Like whenever you click on our name, like you can just click and then do that. We're not gonna send an email in this session. We're just gonna create that widget, which is a button, so that you learn how to create buttons in Flutter. So as I showed you, you add your widgets one on top of each other, separated by commas inside of a column. So we're adding them in a vertical fashion. So now the next widget that we're going to be adding is a text button. So I'm going to be grabbing the text button. I'm going to add it right underneath the size box. I'm just going to drop it in there, and I will fix the indentation and I'll explain it. So the text button is nothing more than just a button provided by the material library. They call it a text button because it's very simple, because it's nothing more like a text. But you can add other things inside of the text button because everything in Flutter is a widget. So the text button, you can add a single child, but the child of the text button could be another type of widget that takes more than one child. That way you build the hierarchy like that. So the text button takes as a requirement an unpressed event. That way, when you click on the button, you can trigger an action. And it takes a single child. Row is very similar. Row is another widget. Row is similar to like a column. Remember, a column aligns the widgets in a vertical fashion. Row aligns the widget in a horizontal fashion. So I want to now add this structure right here. You see, I want an icon, and then I want a label like with a name, and then I want that to be a button. So if I want them horizontally, I add a row widget, just like you see here. So this row widget centers the widgets, centers the widget horizontally, makes it only the width of the children that it contains. That is the minimum amount that it will take. As many children as it has, that is going to be the width of the row. And as the children of that row, I'm going to add other widgets that are widgets for adding icons. For example, like this icon widget, you can add a bunch of icons for free available to you from the material library. Let me show you. If you go to the material icons in the material library from Google, you can use all of these icons completely for free. I'm going to drop that link in the chat. So in case you want to do that in the future, but these are mostly the icons that I use in my applications because they're free, they're raster, they're very sharp. And of course, did I say free? Yes. So you can just use them in your applications, and then they look very sharp, very cool, and you can use them. So feel free to use these completely free. Let's continue now. I'm gonna be adding the one that looks like that. You see, like the little envelope and whatnot. You can feel free to do add other icons if you want. Add anything. Make this portfolio yours, right? So, like I showed you, I'm adding like an email icon with the color of my application. I am adding a constant, just a little bit of space, like a width of 10 pixels, and I'm adding a text widget with my email and the color of the application. So I'm going to reload one more time. Let's see what it starts looking perfect. So it looks nice. I love this. Now, as a homework, here I did not specify it. Here I say, feel free to add more for your case. For example, I'm gonna just if you want to add more, like more buttons, just grab this same one, copy paste it multiple times, and then I'm gonna add one, for example, for my website. So I'm gonna paste that one. I'm gonna add an icon, for example, like I think it's called language, but that one gives me like a little bit of an icon that looks like the web. So I'm gonna be adding here, for example, Roman just codes dot web dot app. See, I'm adding another button. I can just reload it, and then you will see like another one underneath it. Let me see what other icons I can use. I want to add something for like, is there anything something for like cloud? So I'm gonna do like cloud. There it is. See, there's one called like cloud, just like that. So I'm gonna copy this one and paste it right underneath it. And then I'm gonna call it, for example, the icon is gonna say cloud, and here I'm going to say Google certified cloud architect. And let's say when I click in there later, I want people to go to my profile in the Google Cloud. If I reload this, see, you add multiple, and then see, they all look the same. So that's the cool thing about Flutter. You can reuse, you can build your structures in a very simple way. Very cool. Awesome. So I hope that you guys have finished up to this point, and then you see how cool it looks. We can now proceed to the next section, which is actually just a bonus. If you want to continue in this one, perfect. But this is just a bonus. Like, I'm just going to show you how you can do animations in Flutter in a very simple way. So animations in Flutter is nothing more than pretty much the same thing we did like with the stateful widget, but it's done for you. So Flutter, what it does is at every frame, it just moves your widgets, let's say by tiny little pixels, by incrementally, and then it gives the illusion that is an animation, but it's just mostly just changing frame by frame the position of a widget, and then it gives the illusion of a smooth animation. How do you accomplish that in Flutter? Very simple. This is again like a bonus, but I'm going to show you anyway. If you want to follow along, perfect. If you want to continue with the rest of the collab, also go ahead. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do one simple animation. So one animation would be, I'm going to be adding a glowing effect to our widget down there, like to this to our badge pretty much. So how do you do that? You need to add a couple of things. One of the things that you need to add to Flutter is a ticker provider state mixin. I know it's a mouthful and you will understand now. A ticker provider state mixin is nothing more than a construct that Flutter provides you so that you can tap into the frames per second that Flutter renders your application in. So if you want to tap into the internal clock of Flutter, again, Flutter renders every 60 frames per second. It renders your application at 60 frames per second. If you want to hop into that train and you want to be also, you want your widgets to also render at that speed, and you want to create animations, very fluid animations, you need to import something called ticker provider state mixin, which gives you nothing more than a kind of like a ticker. A ticker is like It's a way to tap into the clock of Flutter so that then you can render your widgets at that same frame rate. Like it just provides that, every time the Flutter paints your widget at every frame, you want your widget to also repaint. And then you move your widget a little more, you repaint. You move it a little more, it repaints. So the ticker gives you that. You can insert yourself into the frame in frames per second rendering mechanism of Flutter. So how do we do it? Let's do it. So you say with ticker provider state mixin, which makes your stateful widget now able to rebuild with Flutter. And then now you create an animation controller. An animation controller controls the animation. You can tell it how long it's going to take. You give it the duration, and then you can even specify, how do I want it? I want it to go forward. I want it to go back. I want it to repeat. I want it to go from one point to another point, to one value to another value. You can do all of that with the animation controller. So just copy this animation controller after you do, of course, the state mixing, like I showed you. You, by saying with ticker provider state mixing, it's kind of like you do inheritance. Like you're adding capabilities to this a custom widget. Now we're gonna add this late, you say late animation controller, and you add that controller. Good. A controller, like I say, is just an object that then you use to control the animation. I'm going to show you how to do that. Something that we didn't do before in this stateful widget is tap into the life cycle of every widget. Or a stateful widget goes through many life cycles. It initializes itself, it builds itself, and then it disposes itself, meaning after Flutter takes it out of the widget tree. So there are a couple of methods that we need to implement. In this case, there's one method called init state. Init state gets called once, only at the beginning of when the widget gets inserted into the widget tree, and it just gets called once. So because it just gets called once, we want to initialize our controller at that specific point. So in your state class of your stateful widget, make sure to insert this init state method. You call the super init state, and then you initialize the animation controller. So an animation controller takes two main parameters. The vsync means tell the animation controller who's the one that's going to be providing the timing, like that ticker, the animation, remember the frames per second synchronization. You see here the ticker provider gives you that. So who's the ticker provider? The class itself. That's why we say this. By saying this, I tell the animation controller, I am the one who's going to be providing you with the capabilities to tap into the internal clock of Flutter, so that then you can render yourself at 60 frames per second. And then you do the duration. Throughout the rendering of Flutter, you want to say, I want my animation to last 2 seconds. So for example, I want to do a glow animation, so you want to make it 2 seconds. And then at the end, you execute it and you say, I want that animation to go, from 0 to 2, like 2 seconds. And then I want it to repeat, meaning just goes and start again and repeats when it ends at the 2 seconds, at the 2 second mark, starts again from the beginning and starts executing. This is repeat. Another way to do it is, like, let's say if you just want to execute once, you say forward. Forward means start, end, and then stop. Don't do anything. In our case, we're going to say repeat, meaning execute the controller, give it the ticker provider, which is this, and you say last for 2 seconds, but start all over again. Perfect. Now, again, whenever you're using controllers and animation controllers, they take a lot of resources from your system, because they use, some of these are like GPU intensive. They use, for example, like a really complex animations. They take a lot of memory, sometimes a lot of processing power, sometimes when you do them really complex. But in this case, you want to dispose of those resources when the widget gets mounted unmounted from the widget tree. So that's why I provided a method where you can dispose of that controller after using it. So that's why you call the method dispose, but the method dispose gets called automatically for you. You don't have to call it. When widget removes this widget from the widget tree, it calls dispose, and then it calls dispose. You get rid of the controller, get rid of the syncing, get rid of the ticker provider. That way it doesn't keep running in the background. Perfect. Now what you do, what we're going to do is we're going to be replacing our container, our existing container, which has like our image. Remember this one right here? Let me just do that. This container contains like our whole image, right? It contains the like our avatar. The way that you do it is you just we're going to be replacing this container because we're going to be adding like a stack instead of a container. A stack is another type of widget that adds your widgets one on top of each other in a pancake fashion, like in a layered fashion, right? Like one on top of each other. What we want to do is we want to add the image, and then we want to add a circle right behind our image that it just opens up and scales, and then it makes it look like it's glowing. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy this whole stack and we're going to replace our existing container right here. So this container right here, replace it completely by that new stack. And let me explain what the stack has now. So the stack is kind of like a column, but a column lays them all vertically. The stack lays them all also one on top of each other, but using like that depth perception, like one on top of one in front of each other, one in front of each other. So we have a container that is only a circle with the color of our application, and then we have our image just the way that it was before. But the stack, all it did was added the image in front, added a circle right behind it. So you need a stack for that. So now I'll save it. If I show the application, you may think like Roman, but it didn't work. Believe me, it is there and you see it. So you see the circle is being shown because the image is not displaying. The circle is right behind it, but it's just showing through our container image because the image is not showing yet. But you see that is a circle. Now we want to make that circle glow. How do we do that? We have to make an animation. So how do we do that? You have to now create a transition. Flutter has like these other widgets. Remember, everything in Flutter is a widget, even animations. So animations in Flutter are divided into implicit animations and explicit animations. Implicit animations are animations that just you can just add a widget and it gives you an animation, but you're giving up control over convenience. There's like animated container, animated image, animated padding, animated this, and there's a lot of animated like widgets. But you just wrap your widget, the one that you want an animation on, and then you do it. Now there are other widgets called explicit animation widgets, which give you full control of the animation. You describe how long you want it, what type of animation you want. You can animate it on a curve. You can provide a lot of customizations to your animations. So you use explicit animations. One of those widgets that provide explicit animations is the scale transition widget. Scale transition widget, you give it a couple of parameters. What we're going to do, we're going to copy this widget and we're going to replace the container that has this circle right here. You see the glowing circle? We're going to be replacing that container by that scale transition. Let me show you how that works. So I'm going to paste it right there, right where my circle was. Make sure to add the comma. Forgot the comma in the scale transition. Apologies for that. But then the scale transition is just a widget wrapping our container. What is this widget going to do? It's going to scale my widget from 1, meaning 100% of the widget, to 1.5, meaning 150. Like it's going to be like it's going to increase it by 50%. So it's going to be from 1 to 1.5. It's just going to be 1.5 larger than what it was before. It's going to be using the controller that we applied up there. So you have to provide the controller because this is what controls the animation. Let me explain it again. So you see, you provide a tween. A tween, remember, it stands for between. So you have to give it an initial value and an end value. It begins at 100% and then it ends at 1.5 of its size. Then you have to call the method animate, which generates an animation. What type of animation is going to be a curved animation? You can provide a curve, like an ease in and out. You can provide like all those type of animations. and the animation needs something to that is going to control it. What is going to control it? The controller up here. So you see, we're going to say the duration is 2 seconds and repeat yourself. So you give that as the parent of the current of the curved animation. After you do that, then now if I save it, for example, I'm going to save my code and I'm going to reload. Now we will see like a glowing effect right behind it. You see, there's like a, but it's not quite there. It's almost there, but not quite there. It's looking like a glow, but what makes it look like a glow is actually like a fading effect. Now we want to fade it. We want to do that fading piece. Perfect. Let's do that. So the way that you do a fading is you now add another type of transition. In this case, we're going to add a fade transition. That's another type of explicit animation in Flutter that gives you now a fading effect. So the way that you do it is we're gonna wrap our scale transition inside of a fade transition. That way, both of them happen simultaneously while it scales is gonna fade at the same time. So how do we do that? Oh, you could do it this way. Look, I do it like this. I do it like this. You either copy this code, right? You copy this code, you put it right up here, and then you're going to grab our scale transition. You grab that, you cut it out, and then you're going to put it right where the other one was, right there. There you go. And you see, now you can now, for example, format this a little better so that it looks a little better. Another way to do it, for example, if you don't want to do that, uh, you know, jumping around, the way that you could do it is the way that it was. Let me show you the way that it was. This is how it was. This is our scale transition. And then you can use Visual Studio Code to then wrap your widget inside another widget. You can do this. Click, and then you say wrap with widget. It's just going to give you a core widget, a basic widget. And then all you do is copy this piece right here up to where it says child. And then if you just come over here and replace up to where it says child, you can do it like this as well. Another way to do it is do what I did again. Let me do it one more time. You can wrap your widget inside another widget, add the fade transition widget, and just copy these two properties up here. That's another way to do it. So I gave you 3 ways on how you can do that. But if you notice, I have a container wrapped inside a scale transition, and then the scale transition wrapped inside a fade transition. Both of these animations are controlled by the same controller, the one that we did up there. So both of them are going to take 2 seconds and is going to repeat after it finishes. So after I do that, I'm going to save it. I am going to reload my the Flutter application right here. Remember, either hit R or Shift R. And if we come back, now you see that it looks a little bit more like a glowing effect. So it looks pretty cool. I like it. Now the only thing that we needed is just show the image. We're going to be showing it in a minute. But now you see, now we have that glowing effect. Very simple, very straightforward. Perfect. You see, now it's looking pretty good. You can add another type of animation. I gave this as a bonus. And I even provide the whole code in here, what it looks like. But I'm just going to do one more animation so that you can see it. And then now we're going to see how we can deploy this to the web. Shall we? Let's do the final bonus, which is one more animation that is just doesn't do this. It's going to do one more animation that is going to slide it from the bottom. Let's do that. Because I know that you guys are experts in animations already. I'm going to do this a little quicker because it's already pretty much leveraging what we have, but I'm just going to do one more controller because I'm going to control now one controller controls the fading and the transition. Another controller is going to control the sliding. So you can do that. So I'm going to add another. You see that we're already in step number 9. I'm going to copy that animation controller called content controller. In my init state, right underneath it, I'm going to add another control, the initialization of my controller. And if you saw earlier, the way that I explained it. I'm still using the same widget to be the one that provides the ticker. The ticker, remember, is that timing capability so that you can synchronize with Flutter's animation capabilities. Now this time is going to take 3 seconds. So this animation is going to take 3 seconds, but instead of being repeat, now it's just going to go forward once and it's going to stop there. That's all it's going to do. Now what we need is also dispose it. Of course, we need to dispose of that animation, of that animation controller. You say dispose, right? I'm saying I'm doing it right here. And then inside of the build method, you're going to wrap, like the way that we did it, you're going to wrap the whole thing. You're going to wrap this whole center widget. You're going to wrap this whole widget. You see how cool it is? Like you can wrap one single widget, but you can wrap the whole thing if you want to. And then it makes now the whole thing animated. So you see all of my widgets right here. I'm going to collapse all the children. So this is my whole widget, right? The whole center widget. Now we're going to wrap the center widget. Let's do it the way that we did it earlier. So wrap your center around a widget. So you say wrap with widget. And then just call it slide transition. And slide transition is slightly different from the other animations. The other animations, like you saw here, they take a tween of type double, and then you begin and end with one single value. The slide transition takes an offset because it's a position on the screen. So you need to tell it that I want us to slide from the X value to certain Y value. So you want to provide an offset. So by me, I'm saying I'm going to start at 0 in the X value, meaning the X is going to stay the same, but it's the Y value that is going to change. So I'm going to say start at 1.25 of itself, meaning like let's say one size of the container, 1.20, like 125 of its size, pretty much. So it's going to start at the bottom and then it's going to end at 0, meaning the original position, the 0 position, x0 y0, that position. So it's going to start at 0.125, meaning 100 and like the its size plus a quarter, pretty much, but at below, and then it's going to slide up. Let's see what this looks like. So if I save that and I reload it, let's see what it looks like. So you see it slides from the bottom at a 0.25 of its position, because if I say one, meaning is one fractional unit, meaning itself, like one size of itself. Like I'm gonna start at at 1 of my position, like 0.125, something like that. So if I do 0.125, it's just like, let's just start at kind of like a no. So if I say 1, for example, sorry, if I say 1 like this and I reload it, see it starts like at 1 of the screen actually. So actually, no, I'm sorry. It starts at 1 of its position. Now, if I say 0.125, so then it's like an eighth of its value. So it's just going to start from below. It's going to slide up, and then it's just going to do that, and then it's going to end at the original position, which is where it is right now. So if I save that, now if I reload it, it's all good. It's going to slide up, perfect. But you see, it's not looking that great. We need to add a fade transition to that. So let's do the same thing. I'm going to wrap my existing slide transition. You say wrap with widget. I'm going to say fade transition. And I'm going to do this transition, which is pretty much like the one that we did before. And I'm just going to paste it right above it. Or again, you can do it any way you want. You can wrap it. You can let me just do this. There we go. And then, for example, here, perfect, there it is. So I have my fade transition wrapping, I have the center widget wrapped inside a slide transition. And then my fade transition is going to start at 0, meaning completely invisible, and is going to end at 1, which is fully visible. We're going to be using the same controller, and then it's going to do ease in and out of that. You see? Perfect. So now I'm going to reload it, and now let's see what it looks like. You see now it fades from completely invisible to fully visible. The animation, the glowing animation continues going, and that's it. So now with this final piece, we've completed like the Flutter aspect of this workshop. So now that we have our Flutter web application, let's say our portfolio application already built, now let's proceed. If let's say you fell behind a little bit, no worries, I got you covered. In step number 9, I have the whole code already ready. You can just grab it like this, you can copy paste it, and you can use the implementation that I have, and then you can start from there. But at least the whole code is there. If you fell behind a little bit, no worries, you can catch up. And now you can just build anything you want. You can make it your own, change the image, change the title and whatnot. You can do all of that. So now I'll save everything and I will reload. And then if you see now, my widget is looking all good. The portfolio is looking very good. Awesome. So before we proceed with the next aspect of the workshop, does anybody have any questions in the chat? That way we can proceed now with the Firebase aspects. If you got this far, you should be able to have one very cool but very simple portfolio Flutter web application that now you're ready to deploy to Firebase. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, perfect. Okay, if not, again, let me know at any time. Oh, okay, Elaine, you have the question. Do you have a library of transitions and animations to refer to? Yes, there's a couple of libraries that provide animations. There's even this one that I recommend. If you go to pub.dev, which is the repository of Flutter libraries and packages and widgets, there's a couple. One created by this one. Actually, this is the GScanner is it's a company that created like a library for if you do Flutter Animate. I think it's called Flutter Animate. I think this is the package Flutter Animate. Yeah, this Flutter Animate. If you go up over here and say Flutter underscore Animate, this is one of the is a very cool library that creates beautiful animated effects and builders in Flutter. Very easy, very customizable. For example, all those things that I did, you could have just done it very simple by just saying, look, see the same thing that I did. You could just say animate, fade effect, scale effect with a child of a widget. Simple as that. You can just grab another widget and you say animate, fade, and scale. Very simple. So you can use this library. But the way that I was explaining it to you is so that you see how those animations get made. So internally, everything that this library does is what we just did. So it's that way. It's great to know the inner workings of things. Of course, totally support using other libraries, but you definitely need to, be a little tinkerer and like kind of be curious, like, how does that get done? Is that magic? Is that voodoo? What is it? Well, in this case, I showed you how it gets done, but this library, I definitely recommend it if you want to use like those simple animations, like Flutter Animate is pretty good. There are other libraries, other for creating like games and stuff like that that give you really cool animations, but that is the one that I recommend that gives you really, really cool stuff. Great. So let's proceed now with the rest of the code lab. Now that we have, let's say, our Flutter web application, if you got this far, now what we're gonna do, we're gonna be hosting. We're gonna be hosting this web app publicly. So if anybody is either at this spot, get ready because you're going to have now your Flutter web application publicly available that after this session, you can grab that link. You can send it to your friends. You can say, hey, look, this is my profile, my public profile. I just built it with Flutter Web and Firebase. Also, if anybody asks you, have you dealt with the Google Cloud? After this session, you can say confidently, yes. Why? Because Firebase is built on top of the Google Cloud. Firebase Hosting, you're going to be hosting a web page on the Google Cloud for free. Believe me, I'm going to show you how to do that. So let's now get ready to do Firebase. So like I was explaining, Firebase is this suite of serverless services provided by Google under the umbrella of Firebase, of course, that gives you a lot of great features to for you to build applications very robustly. You get authentication. Let's say in the future, if you guys want to do authentication with Facebook, with Twitter, with Microsoft, with LinkedIn, with GitHub, all of those, you can do it with Firebase authentication. You also have hosting, which is what we're going to be doing today. You also have a NoSQL database called Cloud Firestore. You also have cloud messaging. You have which allows you to to send notifications to your users. You have a lot of great features that if I keep counting, we're not going to end today, at the hour, because I definitely want you to explore Firebase. But let's now proceed to step number 10, where we're now going to host our application. We're going to be starting setting up the project in Firebase, in the Firebase console. So let's all go to step number 10, where now we're going to be setting up our Firebase project. So if you don't mind, let's go to the to our code lab and let's go to Firebase. So navigate to console.firebase.google.com, like I'm showing here in the code lab. So I'm going to go there, console.firebase.google.com. I recommend using a Gmail account, because this is how you create your let's say you create your account. For example, I'm going to log out, for example, or I can just log out with another account. But for example, I can even do it in incognito mode so that you can see. I'm going to go to console.firebase.google.com. When you go to console.firebase.google.com, they recommend you using a Google account to sign in. So I'm going to use a Google account. I'm going to use one called IO Extended that I created just for these type of events. So I'm just going to go to my account, and you see I have Firebase console. I already created like some projects already, but you should be able to see it like this. It will say welcome to Firebase, create a brand new project. So I hope that everybody is here at this point. I'm going to move this out of the way. And I hope that you're here. For example, in your case, you're going to click create a project. In my case, I'm going to say add project, because I'm going to be adding an existing project. But make sure that you get to the Firebase console. And if you're brand new to Firebase, again, you're going to get this screen that says create a project. So let's all now create a project. If you're in the create a project, click on that button and follow me. I'm going to click add project. So if you click there, it's going to give you the first step. The first step, it says, now let's create a Firebase project. The Firebase project is how you manage all the resources in Firebase. You can do authentication, you can do hosting, you can do NoSQL databases using Cloud Firestore, you can do cloud messaging, you can do remote config, you can do a bunch of things. You can do testing, you can do A/B testing, you can do Crashlytics, so many things. Let's name our project, like I'm gonna call it very, like my portfolio. So I'm gonna say Roman portfolio. It says web app. I'm going to call it Flutter, for example. I'm going to call it something different. You could call it anything, but make sure that you call it something descriptive, because you're going to use this information later. So now let's hit continue. And then here is asking to enable Google Analytics. We're not going to be using Google Analytics, so you can turn it off. And you click create project. Simple as that. Just 2 steps. Create project, name your project, turn off enable analytics, and just hit create project. So now I'm just waiting for the project to be created for the first time in my Firebase console. So if this is your first time using Firebase, you will see now what Firebase is, what the console looks like. So if I hit continue, my project has been already created. I am going to click continue. So now I'm here in the console. This is my console, which allows me to see all the features that Firebase offers for me. It gives me Crashlytics. It gives me performance insights. It gives me cloud messaging, Firebase extensions that you can tap into that. If you click here on the left-hand side, it gives you this little arrow for you to expand it, and then you can see you see all the offerings that Firebase has for you. For example, we're going to be using most of the build features. If you expand the build, you get authentication, you get app check, you get Firebase, Firestore database, you get hosting. That's what we're going to be doing. You can manage storage from here, like Google Cloud Storage, like buckets. You can manage your functions from here. You could do cloud functions. It's a little bit outside of the scope of this tutorial, but cloud functions are like event driven, single purpose functions that you can deploy on the cloud. Very cool. And if you notice down here, you see what it says here, Spark, no cost, 0 month. That means you're not going to be charged. Everything that we're going to be doing now is completely free up to a certain extent, of course. If you want to know, for example, what are your extents, you can even go here where it says Firebase pricing. The Firebase pricing gives you all the things that you get under the no cost Spark plan. For example, see, you get, for example, for free, you get authentication services for free. You get 1 GB free of Cloud Firestore. Cloud functions is not applicable, but you, for example, hosting is what pertains to us. For example, you get 10 GB free of cloud hosting. You get a custom domain and SSL. You get multiple sites per project, meaning in this project that we just created, you can have more than one site. That's pretty cool. You have a data transfer of 360 megabytes per day. And again, like I said, you get 10 GB for free just to deploy your website. Our website is probably what? Less than a meg, or maybe roughly like a couple of megabytes, but no more than that. So you see, I'm not going to exhaust my storage. And of course, the cool thing is that you're going to get SSL and you can do more than one site. Awesome. So that's the pricing in there. I can drop the link in there in the chat so you guys can see what you have available in the no cost Spark plan, because you get pretty generous limits to get started. But then let's say if you want to do more things, you do the pay as you go, which is also flexible. So let's continue. Let's continue with the workshop. So after that, the project gets created. Now we're going to set up hosting. How do you set up Firebase hosting? Let's do the hosting. So let's come over. Let's go right to where it says hosting. Right here on the left-hand side where it says build, you click where it says hosting. You click there. And now let's set up the hosting. So you say get started. Hosting deploy web and mobile web apps in seconds. So click get started. I'm following exactly what we see here. Right? Now what we're going to do is the setup Firebase hosting is pretty much nothing more than just saying install the things locally, set it up, and then you deploy. So what we're going to do, we're going to install the Firebase tools. Remember, that is the reason why I told you we need NPM. This is the reason, because we're going to be deploying using an NPM package called Firebase tools. So let's do it. So if I copy this, I'm going to copy it to the clipboard, and I'm going to the terminal, or I can even go to the code. Sorry. So if I go to the code, to the Visual Studio Code right here, I can even install it. I do have it installed already, but I'm going to do it one more time just for the sake of you seeing. So I'm going to paste npm install -g, meaning globally, install this globally, Firebase tools. So if I do hit enter, and then it's going to install it. Okay, it's giving me that because I need to say sudo. I need to be in elevated permissions, and then now install it. I provide the password, and then it's going to install it perfectly. It's going to install it. It's all good. So make sure that you install npm, the Firebase tools, because through this npm package is how you're going to be performing the deployment of your package. Okay, so make sure that you do it, because this is going to automate a lot of things for you. So make sure that you install the npm package. So it's npm install -g. Perfect. Okay, the package got installed. Awesome. So let's go to the next step. So I'm going to click next. Now you initialize your project. It says that now that you have the project in there, like that, you want to initialize your project to be a project that is controlled by Firebase, the Firebase tooling, so that then we can do a deployment. So the first thing that you need to do is sign in with Google. Right from here, after you install the CLI, you initialize your project, then you have to type Firebase login. Firebase login. See, it already says that I'm already logged in, but I'm going to say Firebase logout. I can start it again with you. And I have a completely separate account that I'm going to be deploying. Remember, my account is says ioextended at gmail.com. So it's a separate Gmail account. Make sure that you use the same Gmail account that you created the Firebase project with. Make sure that you use the same Gmail account. So you say Firebase. Let me zoom in one more time so you can see it. Firebase login. And when you type Firebase login, it's going to ask you, do you want Firebase to collect CLI emulators? If you don't want, that's okay. I'm going to type no, and then I'm going to hit enter. But what this is going to do is it's going to launch a new window where it's going to allow Firebase CLI to have permissions on my account to do that on my behalf, to do the deployment to my account using my Gmail account. So I'm going to select my account. I'm going to say, yes, I want to give access to Firebase CLI to do the deployment for me. And I'm going to click allow. So I'm going to click allow right here. Perfect. And then it says, yes, Firebase CLI login successful. You can close this window now. We're back here. Now, if I back here, you see now you're gonna get a success message that says success logged in with. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to close this thing. Okay, so let me close it and then let me do it again. Yeah, it's showing a little bit messed up for me. You see, it looks a little funny, but okay, there it is. So I just say, if I say Firebase login, now you see that I'm already logged in as IO extended at 2022 at gmail.com. Now I am able to interact with the Firebase project that I have in the Google Cloud, in the Firebase console. Let's proceed. So after I do that, the next step is just saying Firebase init. Firebase init is going to now create a couple of things in my project so that it actually initializes it so I can do a deployment in my project. So the next thing is Firebase init. So let me copy it right here, copy, and I am going to execute Firebase init. Firebase init. Now it will initialize, and it will initialize this project as a Firebase project as well. Not only a Flutter project, but it's going to bring a couple of things down. It's going to generate a couple of files. You will see it in a minute. If I say Firebase init, now I hit enter, you will see now that it's going to be generating some things. So you're going to follow the prompts. Let's follow the prompt. So if you get this message in here, that means you're good. If you get this message, like it says Firebase up here, perfect. So what does it say? You're about to initialize a Firebase project in this directory. Which Firebase features, like I can zoom in a little if you guys want to see also, perfect. Which Firebase features do you want to set up for this directory? So you use the space bar and the arrow keys in your keyboard to actually move around. So I'm going to use the arrow keys to find hosting. Look, you have like other things like Firestore, remote, hosting with just set up GitHub Actions, but make sure that you do hosting, configure files for Firebase hosting, and optionally set up GitHub Action deploys. Make sure that you pick that one. That is the which is where let me see. I think is the this one right here. Hosting. Configure files for Firebase hosting because we're going to be doing hosting. Once you select it with the arrows in your keyboard, then you press space, and then now you see that it became like the little circle became like green. I'm sorry. So if you pick another one and you press space, you see you're picking that. Don't pick it. Make sure that you do space to uncheck it, and make sure that only the one that says hosting, configure files for Firebase hosting is set up. After that is set, now you can press enter. So make sure that you select hosting, then you hit enter. Now you say, okay, now let's associate this project directory with a Firebase project. We could have even created the project from here from the command line. But at least I wanted to show you how Firebase console works, like the the web console works. But we could have done here, create a new project, and it would have created the project for us also automatically from here. But I wanted you to see it how it works on the console as well, which is a little bit friendlier. So instead of saying create a new project, no, we're gonna say use an existing project. Okay. And remember what I called mine? I called it Roman Portfolio Flutter, something like that, right? If I now select with the arrow keys, I say use an existing project, I hit enter. It's going to say now select a default Firebase project for this directory. So which of the two projects? I have two projects. I created one, and there it is. It's the one called Roman Portfolio Flutter. So I'm going to pick the same project that I have linked. You see how the CLI is accessing your information in the cloud, in the Firebase console. So it's in sync because I provided access to it. So after I now say use an existing project, now let's select the project that I created already. Let's hit enter. It says your public directory is the folder created to your project directory. So now we need to set up what the public directory will be for our project. If you see here in the instructions, if we go now to the the step number 11, which is where we are. See, I already went through all of this. That's perfect. Now what you're going to do is you're going to set up the project, the folder in your project where Firebase is going to grab all your compiled files, is going to grab them from there, copy them to the cloud, and deploy them on the Google Cloud. So you need to tell it where those files will be. And then here I say that it needs to be in a folder called build/web. Why am I picking this folder? Because this is the default folder that Flutter uses to build your web project. So whenever it builds your web project, it generates an index file, it generates some JavaScript files and all of that. So make sure you say build/web. So now I'm going to hit enter. You see, I'm going to see what is my public directory is going to be here. It's going to be build. And then we're going to generate a folder here called web, but that's going to be later. You're going to see it, but it's going to be under this build folder. So let's go again. I'm going to say, did I type it already? Build/web. So I'm going to hit enter. It says configure as a single page app, meaning rewrite all URLs to the index.html. Yes, because now it's going to rewrite everything to index.html. And instead of showing up there index.html, it's just going to say Roman Portfolio Flutter slash like the pound. And it's just going to show me the slash because it uses like a, hash routing. So I'm going to say yes to rewrite all URLs to the index.html. Do I want to set up automatic builds and deploys with GitHub? I say no because I'm not using GitHub for now, but in the future, if you want to set it up, that's perfect. But I'm going to say no, let's not set up automatic builds. That's okay. I hit N, enter. And then that's it. After that, now it says it actually got configured already. Very simple. What did that do? So it created this file called firebase.json, which gives you a little bit of the configuration that you need so that Firebase knows where to pull the files from so that it can deploy it to the cloud. It's going to give you the files that it's going to ignore. For example, it's going to ignore any node modules because you don't want all the node modules to be also pushed to your site because there's a lot of files in there. So it ignores all of that. It ignores any hidden files as well. And of course, what it does is going to rewrite the everything to the index.html. We're going to see now how Flutter Web generates an index.html for your web app, for your Flutter Web application, how the Dart code that we just built gets compiled into a JavaScript file. It's so cool. At the end, you don't get any Dart or you don't get any like executable. You actually get JavaScript, CSS, HTML when you build for the web. It also created this RC file, which is just saying the information about your project. And it gives me no, this is not part of it, but it's just like these two pretty much that it just sets up for you. So it just sets those configuration files, which you should have after doing the Firebase init, and after following all those steps. Perfect. So now that we're ready, look, we just went through all of these steps, all good, perfect. Now let's build our Flutter web application. Remember, we have our application running here. This is all good. Now let's build it for the first time, ready to be built for showing it on a web server. On which web server? On the Google Cloud's web servers. So now we're going to be hosting it on Firebase Hosting completely for free. First, we need to build the web application. So now let's build this. So I'm gonna clear this. I'm gonna clear the the console, and now I'm going to run this command right here that I'm showing, which says Flutter build web. I'm going to paste the code in here, and I'm going to explain what it means. So Flutter build, we're gonna build it for web. You have other things you can do. You can say build for iOS, you can build an APK, you can build for Android, whatever. But in this case, we're going to be building for the web. You're going to say Flutter build web. This is one of the things that we're going to disable image decoding so that it just shows the image not decoded. And we're going to be using this flag called release, meaning we're going to build this web application in release form, meaning is going to minify the code, is going to bundle it, is going to make it very optimal for release so that it can actually generate the files required to be hosted on a web server. So you see that the build see now there's like a web already. See, created like this web folder where we're gonna now build it for release. So now I'm gonna hit enter on that command, Flutter build web, and then dash dash release. So I'm gonna hit enter, and we're just gonna wait a few seconds until now my main Dart file, my main application, is gonna be built for the web. Now you're gonna see inside of this folder one index.html, a couple of JavaScript files. You can see that's it. I think it's done. So now if I go to the web, look what it did. It created an assets folder. Like if I have some fonts, see, it's actually using the material icons. So it kind of packaged it along with it. It has a manifest if you want to build this as a PWA application. And it has like Canvas Kit. Canvas Kit is one of the two renderers that Flutter uses to render your web application. You can either render it as an using HTML renderer, which makes a very small package, but not optimized for animations, or Canvas Kit, which is a little bit larger, but it's optimized for animations. So that's the Canvas Kit. Also, you get, look what you get. You get a service worker, like I mentioned, if you want to use it as a PWA and you want to implement a service worker. Flutter JS is the Flutter framework compiled and minimized and minified as a JavaScript file. You get an index.html, which it doesn't contain nothing more than just pointing to the framework. You see the Flutter, and also it contains your main.dart. The main.dart, all this gibberish that you see here, is your application already compiled as a JavaScript file so that it can be optimized and then you can see it as a web application. But you cannot edit it, unfortunately. You cannot just go there and like, oh, let me add my transition in that JavaScript file. You cannot do that. So you see, it builds a bunch of JavaScript files. So it's all like web-based files that you're going to do. So that's cool. So I build my Flutter application as a web application. You didn't see any Dart files in there. It was all web-based applications. After building your Flutter web as a web application, now the only thing that you need to do, yes, it looks like really simple, but look, the only thing, now you're ready to deploy it to the Google Cloud. All you need to say is Firebase deploy, and that's it. We just build, every time you do Firebase deploy, you make sure that you build your Flutter web app first. Don't say Firebase deploy without building. Otherwise, your changes are not going to be reflected. If you change your application from one color to the other, build it first, then deploy. You can even create a little script that when you build it, it deploys it. You can do that too. But in this case, they separate the command. So first you build it like we did there. You build it. And now we're going to say Firebase deploy. If I hit Firebase deploy now, if I hit enter, what this is going to do is it's going to go to that folder, the build.web, the one that we just built right here. He's going to grab all those files. He's going to copy the files, 21 files. He's going to grab that. He's going to upload it to Firebase Cloud host to Firebase Hosting, and now he's going to tell you the deployment is complete. This is the project console, which is the console side, the side up there, and you get a custom URL based on the name of the project that we just did, and it's right here. Look, it already gives you HTTPS. Is the name of my project, for example, Roman portfolio -flutter, and then he adds .web.app. If I click this now, let me open it and let's see what it does. And there it is. Now my website or my Flutter Web App is fully available online. I am going to drop it in the chat if you guys can take a look at it so that you see that I'm not making it up. You see that now that is completely available online, publicly, very secure. You see that little the little lock in there, which shows that this connection is secure, and that and now I can just give it to anybody. I can just do it again. For example, oh, I'm going to change the color of my application. For example, you can continue doing so many times as you want. For example, I come back over here and I say my application will be accent blue, for blue accent, for example. Again, you see that right now is purple. Right now I'm going to save it. I am going to rebuild it one more time. You see, I'm rebuilding it. And after it rebuilds, I am going to redeploy it. And now you will see the new changes that instead of being purple, now they will be blue. Why? Because I made the change in Flutter. I rebuild the project. And now I will just say Firebase deploy. When I hit deploy, it will overwrite the files that are up there. The deployment is complete. And if I reload it, there it is. Changes show correctly. So did anybody try any of this? Is anybody far along in your process? And were you able to do something like this? Like were you able to deploy your own application? If you do, drop it on the chat. Let's show it. I don't want to put you on the spot. I just wanted to highlight your accomplishments. But yes, pretty much this is it as far as Flutter. How we build a Flutter web application with Flutter. Very easy. We build it very cool, very, very fast. It took us less than an hour. Then we grabbed that application, we built it, and now we deployed it publicly available for free on the Google Cloud. And now you can have it available to share it with anybody. You can add more features to this. You can add that when you click, it takes you to your, it takes you to like an email client, or when you click here, it takes you to another, to your website. When you click here, it takes you to another place. So it would be cool if you take this much further, but at least I wanted to walk away giving you the resources that you need so that then you can build your own Flutter web applications, because Flutter Web is what gives you the lowest barrier to entry in becoming a Flutter a developer. And of course, you just have now a Flutter project, a Firebase project, a Firebase project that then you can use to create your own projects. You see, now I have my hosting already available. I can then even explore other things. I can even see the traffic, how it's going, like how people are engaging with my application, like how people are using, as far as like what I'm using as far as my web application. And see, it's all complete, all free. I'm not paying anything. So it'd be great if anybody completed it. Please share it with us. Let's just show it, drop it in the chat. We can take a look at it. But I just wanted to say again one more time, Flutter is an amazing framework. You are, this is the best time to join this movement to become a Flutter developer. And I just want to say again, thank you, Elaine, thank you the whole team, GDSC Western Michigan University. Thank you so much for inviting me, for letting me share my knowledge with you. I'm really proud, to do this with your communities, because again, you guys are the future of this of the technology space. You guys are going to be the champions and the pioneers in this industry. So it's a pleasure for me to share my knowledge with you, so that I can help you in your journey in becoming great professionals in the technology space. So thank you so much again. With that, I'm gonna leave it up to you guys now. I'm gonna go to mute if you have any questions, but I'll now bring it back to you guys.
Thank you so, so much, Roman. Once again, that was an amazing workshop. I probably will be thinking about widgets a lot for today. But I just want to say it was such an amazing workshop. We definitely learned a lot. I dare say this for everyone here as well. Thank you for helping us gain that extra skill set under our belt. And that's it. You did mention you wanted to do a raffle. Do you want to do it now
I
or?
wanted to see if anybody had